Yo, what's up guys? CJax back with another video, and today we're going to be discussing how WWE absolutely exposed themselves yesterday at Survivor Series. And you're probably wondering, well, what is this guy talking about? What do you mean exposed themselves? They exposed all of their iniquities and the downfalls and the problems that prohibit this current version of WWE from being anything above mid at best. Now, the simple truth is that from top to bottom yesterday, there were only really two good matches. Those being the Intercontinental Championship Triple Threat match, which was awesome, and the main event, which I thought was actually pretty solid from start to finish with the Bloodline versus the OG Bloodline, okay? Now, I'm going to talk about the first way that they exposed all of their flaws. The first flaw that was very, very much on display yesterday was that the women's wrestling on the main roster of women's wrestling and the booking for it, the storytelling, and even the wrestling is atrocious. It just is, right? We saw Nia Jax, who basically botched at least 5 to 10 chair shots yesterday in the first 10 minutes of the match. We saw, if you can go look it up for yourself. Obviously, I can't show it because of copyright, but at certain points throughout the match, you could see Bianca, Bayley, and Nia Jax getting, upset and calling out spots in the match to each other because Nia Jax and Bayley and Naomi even kept on messing up spots until Bianca really got into the match, and same with Io and Rhea. The match finally picked up. You know what I'm saying? There was less botches. It was more fluid. But before that, for the first 15-20 minutes of this match, it was boring. It was nonsensical. And when you factor in the fact that the ending result of this match was the faces winning, and the faces have no gold whatsoever except for, Bianca, who's one half of the tag champions, which again, the women's tag team championships mean absolutely nothing. They never have. Bianca and Jade elevated them a little bit, but they don't matter, right? And that team was enough to beat the reigning Money in the Bank winner, right? The women's world champion, the women's WWE champion, the quote-unquote enforcer Raquel Rodriguez, and Candice LeRae. That lets you know everything you need to know about the women's division. If the world champions are not beating people who don't have titles, therefore the world champions do not really mean anything. They don't matter. Nia Jax has been pinned at least 2 or 3 times in just the last 3.5 months since winning the championship. So if the WWE Women's Championship doesn't matter, the World Championship doesn't matter, then why would the Women's US and the Women's Intercontinental Championships matter? They're not going to. There's a reason why they didn't even do a proper announcement of the Intercontinental Championship on the episode of Raw last week, because it does not matter. It doesn't matter at all. And Triple H is continuously proving to us that Rhea Ripley will continuously be booked as Superman. She is going to be booked as the top woman in the division no matter what. No matter what. Even though Io and Bianca are much better than her in the ring, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. Becky Lynch, honestly, is still good in the ring, and she's way better than Rhea on the mic, because Rhea Ripley can still not cut promos with the, I'm Batman, take back my title that I never lost, yeah, I never lost, yeah. No, that's the end of the discussion. The women's wrestling, the women's main roster specifically, is absolute garbage. It is, from top to bottom. The titles don't mean anything. All the champions got buried yesterday. The Money in the Bank, Tiffany with the Money in the Bank means absolutely nothing, because she's not going to cash in, and her whole entire thing now is her just being a lackey and a loser. That's all it is with the belt. Oh, I'm going to cash in. It's Tiffy time, and then nothing happens. So that's that. Women's wrestling on the main roster is awful. The NXT crop of women's talent that's coming up soon are probably going to be very good, because at the very minimum, they are a lot better than 90% of this roster already is right now. So that's just the simple facts about it. He proved it yesterday. It's that simple. Second thing that they were exposed for yesterday, Cody Rhodes and Gunther. Now, this is a separate thing for each of them individually, so I'll talk about it first with Cody Rhodes. The simple fact that the North Star of the wrestling industry, I respect you, I have libations in my back pocket for you. Cody Rhodes not being on Survivor Series yesterday lets you know everything you need to know about how important the WWE Championship and the WWE Champion are right now. Cody Rhodes is not even important enough to get a spot on the card. LA Knight versus Shinsuke Nakamura got on the card instead of Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens Part 2, right? Because you could have done a Part 2 yesterday, and Cody, let's say he wins because of disqualification, so he didn't legitimately beat Kevin Owens 1, 2, 3. So because of that, you have to now run it back at Saturday Night Main Event again in a no-holds-barred or an Extreme Rules match to go fully, out the walls, because these guys said to each other last week on SmackDown or a couple weeks ago, I hate you. If you don't like each other, then why in the world are you not wrestling at every chance you have? You get what I mean? And when Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar were champions, because I know people are going to say, oh, well, Roman didn't show up to last year's Survivor Series. It's because Roman and Brock were part-timers who had the ability to go part-time, because when they did show up, they were delivering S-tier promos, not S-tier promos, obviously, for Lesnar, but you get what I'm saying. S-tier segments and great matches. Roman Reigns, for example, was part-timing last year, but when he did show up, you got a classic at Mania 39 versus Cody Rhodes. You got a absolute classic at Money in the Bank last year with him and Solo versus versus the Usos. You even got a very, very underrated and amazing match, personally. Actually, it's not even underrated. Him versus Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber last year was a masterpiece. So that's why that happens. Brock Lesnar, same thing. 2015 Royal Rumble with Cena and Rollins in the Triple Threat. Absolutely phenomenal match. His stuff with Roman at SummerSlam in, 2022. If you're part-time, but you are delivering massive viewership like Roman Reigns does, we saw this with the segments over the last few weeks with the Bloodline, right? If you're able to deliver that viewership, that money, that notoriety, and you're also able to put on great matches and have engaging feuds to the point that when you are there, you are always on the show, that means more to me than Cody Rhodes, who's supposed to be the quote-unquote workhorse, who's there every week, and still can't even get on the PLE. It's unacceptable. Cody Rhodes now is an embarrassment as a WWE champion, and there's really nothing else to really say about it at this point. His story is not warranting a spot for him on one of the biggest PLEs of the year. That lets you know everything that you need to know about his current championship reign and his status and value as a WWE champion. If Roman Reigns was working full-time as WWE champion last year and the year before, do you really think that he would be missing Survivor Series? Come on, man. Grow up. Gunther, next thing that was exposed. Gunther is absolutely garbage. There is no reason that he even should have been on the card. Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens should have been on the card instead of this Gunther versus Damian Priest match. Because again, Gunther has become boring. He is a wimp. He is not good. He is not good on the mic. And his matches are very, very boring and unexciting. Now, sometimes he does give you the occasional good or even amazing match like Mania 39 versus Sheamus and Drew. But the unfortunate truth about Gunther is that he's slow, he's unexciting, and he's simply boring, and he's not a draw. Those are 4 things that your world champion needs to have. The world championship means that you are the second in command. You are the second best in the entire company. Could you really sit there with a straight face and look at yourself in the mirror and say Gunther is the second best talent in the WWE? No, you cannot. It's impossible, because you know that it would be an absolute and utter lie. Him and Damian Priest have a stale story. Finn Balor getting involved makes no sense, because Finn Balor just lost to Damian Priest at Bad Blood. And then he waits a month and a half and all of a sudden wants to get even again? It's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing ever happens involving Gunther in this championship reign that, number 1, makes sense, and number 2, is actually executed well. He had one good match in the last 4 months, and that was the match to actually get the world championship versus Damian Priest. Other than that, Gunther hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything. He wrestled Randy Orton, he wrestled Sami Zayn, he wrestled Cody Rhodes, and then he wrestled Damian Priest last night. And all 4 of those matches, in my personal opinion, were absolute mediocre or garbage. The only exception being the Sami Zayn match on Raw. That match was like average or slightly above average. Everything else was just not good. It just isn't. Damian Priest, the whole buildup is that Gunther's afraid of Damian Priest, and the simple fact that, he's scared of Damian because he didn't win clean at SummerSlam, just to have Damian get hurt in the match yesterday in kayfabe, and then all of a sudden Damian Priest loses. So Gunther still wins in an unclean way, but somehow it's supposed to mean more now than it did at SummerSlam? What? The whole point of this situation, the point is with me talking about Cody and Gunther, is that the world champions are trash, which basically makes it so that none of these titles mean anything. If you have a guy as talented as LA Knight, who got beat down by Shinsuke Nakamura in about 10 minutes in a mid-match, what is there to say about the champions? If you have super talent like LA Knight does, he really is a world champion, main event level talent, and he's being relegated to losing to Shinsuke Nakamura for the U.S. title, which the U.S. title continues to just be an interchanged belt that multiple people can carry, and it carries absolutely no weight. You get what I mean? It's similar to the Intercontinental Championship in that aspect. But if those championships don't mean anything, they're barely shown on PLEs, the World Championship, it has non-engaging stories, it's boring, and the person holding it barely wrestles and barely shows up to work and barely cuts promos, and when he does cut promos, they're not good, and the WWE champion himself calls himself the workhorse who took on the Cena schedule, and he's not even good enough to get on the Survivor Series PLE. So what's the point? If the world titles don't matter, the mid-card titles don't matter, then the championships as a whole do not matter, which takes a lot from the enjoyment of wrestling. It's that simple. When I know for a fact that if it really came down to it, these champions are not going to show up and really fight to prove why they are the best, to show why they are the best, they're not going to. They're going to win against someone who's injured, or Cody Rhodes beats Gunther off of a roll-up, or Cody doesn't even wrestle at Survivor Series. Gunther shows up in a suit every week just like Cody, and all they do is talk, and there's no good promos at all. It's just embarrassing, right? The titles don't mean anything, and therefore your product is worse, because the main event scene is tainted by bad promos and basically no wrestling, which makes absolutely no sense. Then the 4th thing that was exposed yesterday. Triple H's short-term booking is atrocious. It is atrocious. Anything that this dude does that's considered good by many people, and even by myself, has to take at least 3 to 4 months of build-up. It's that simple. He can't do anything in the short-term booking. It's impossible. The Women's War Games match yesterday was built up to within like 3 or 4 weeks. That's why it was rushed. It was poorly done. It was poorly built. The story threads weren't making sense. You have Io and Bayley who have bad history with nearly everyone in the match outside of Liv, Raquel, and Rhea Ripley. Everyone else has bad history with them, and it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's never brought up. Nobody cares, and they just gloss over it. That's all that happens. They just literally just gloss over it. It's nonsensical, like I keep saying, and it's just it brings it so that nothing really matters anymore. It really doesn't matter, right? If something is short term and takes a month to build up, it's not going to work. It just isn't. Same thing with Gunther and Damian Priest. The build-up made no sense. It was boring. It was uninteresting. And then you get to the actual match, and it contradicts everything that was built up of Gunther being afraid of Damian Priest and winning unclean and feeling like he's not a true champ. And then he wins unclean again. So that doesn't make any sense. Shinsuke Nakamura versus LA Knight. The build-up is awful. They don't even really have any promos with each other. They don't really talk with each other. There's no real wrestling involved with those two except for a couple brawls where Shinsuke just hits him in the back of the head a couple times. And that's it. That's it. And that's all that it took for Shinsuke to come back and just take the title from a guy who was having a great reign and holding it for over 3 months. Do you see what I'm saying? Cody's short-term booking with Kevin Owens. This is something that actually has been lingering for the last couple months, and he still can't get on one of the biggest PLEs of the year because it's not a hot story. It's not an interesting story. It's not engaging enough to warrant Cody getting a spot over LA Knight versus Shinsuke or Gunther versus Damian Priest for the second time. Are you kidding me? The short-term booking is atrocious. It just is. Nothing works. Nothing is explained. There's missed opportunities all over the place. And at the end of the day, when you get to the actual match itself, it's never good enough to warrant the short build-up that's just not good to begin with. It is unacceptable. And quite frankly, I'm really struggling to understand how people are actually letting WWE get away with this. But at the end of the day, it really is what it is at the end of the day, man. There's nothing else to really say about it. Then, the fifth and final way that they expose themselves is basically a good and a bad thing. Number one, I guess number 1 to part 5, I should say, they finally made Roman Reigns look like an absolute beast again. He was spearing people left and right, hitting cross bodies, 1v5ing the Bloodline to make it inside of the cage. It was a really sick moment. And then he gets the win off of the spear to Solo Sikoa. That was a really cool thing, and it made Roman Reigns feel like he did during his Tribal Chief run, right? When he was just straight up brutalizing people, hitting Superman punches and spearing dudes left and right. It was a great moment. But the problem with this is the simple fact that you can clearly tell throughout the entire night that nothing really carries relevance or mainstream or main event level appeal besides the Bloodline. That is a problem. And it was exposed on full front yesterday. The crowd was dead in 80 to 90% of the night last night. They popped when they were asked and told to pop pretty much, right? LA Knight's little voice meter thing that popped up when he came out, it started at 85 and the little live and loud meter they do. And then after LA Knight came out, right, it didn't go up at all. They took it off the screen after 5 seconds because they're like, oh, these guys aren't even getting loud. The crowd was not interested in anything. But when the Bloodline match came around, even though the crowd was not that great for it, it was the hottest they had been all night for a match. It just was. And that lets you know everything you need to know. The only main event, the only mainstream thing that's actually going to get people out of their seats, that's going to get people glued to their screens, that's going to generate millions and millions and millions and millions of views across social media and across the internet is the Bloodline. They're the only ones that are going to do it consistently, may I add. That's it. It's the end of the discussion at this point. Roman Reigns is the biggest draw in the company, and he is the only one who really has that gravitas to the point where you're like, oh, I have to watch this. This is super interesting. This matters to me. And that's just a simple fact. And why is that a problem? It is a problem because outside of Roman, the Usos, Sami Zayn right now while he's in the Bloodline, obviously Paul Heyman's going to carry relevance with or without the Bloodline because it's Paul Heyman. He's that guy. Solo Sikoa is going to carry relevance as he continues to be an adversary to Roman Reigns, and so is Jacob Fatu with "I love you Solo." But outside of that, in the Bloodline, and a Bronson Reed occasionally, none of these dudes matter. And same with the woman, none of this stuff matters. None of the matches matter. And same with the championships, as I already explained for the women's division. And same with the championships for the men's division as well. You have one main star, and everything is built around him. So the point is that when he's not on the screen, you can notice a serious quality and a serious intrigue drop-off and a serious viewership drop-off on the internet. WWE has officially exposed themselves from top to bottom and showed you that they are struggling in multiple different facets. And until The Rock and Cena are back for this road to WrestleMania, things are likely not going to change for the foreseeable future. Enjoy it, sit with it, have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Peace out. One love.